Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Let's get comfortable, maybe with a warm cup of tea, and settle in for a story. This is a story about a young woman named Clara and her little, quiet journey of becoming just a little bit better every single day. Clara lived in a small, cozy apartment in a town filled with old brick buildings and friendly faces. Her window looked out over a street lined with oak trees that changed their colors with the seasons. But for a while, Clara felt like she wasn't changing at all. She felt stuck, like a clock that had stopped ticking. Every day felt the same. She woke up, went to her job at the local library, came home, made dinner, and watched TV until she fell asleep. It wasn't a bad life, but it felt gray. There were no bright colors. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, an old gentleman came into the library. He had kind eyes and a warm smile. He asked Clara for a book on gardening. As she found it for him, he said something that she would never forget. "You know," he said softly, "the secret to a beautiful garden isn't planting everything all at once. It's just a little bit of care every single day. One weed pulled, a little bit of water here and there. Small things make the biggest difference." His words stayed with Clara long after he left. That evening, instead of turning on the TV, she sat by her window and thought, a little bit of care every single day. What if she applied that to her own life? The idea of making huge, drastic changes was overwhelming. It felt like trying to climb a mountain in one big jump, but what if she just took one small step? The next morning, her alarm went off as usual. But instead of hitting the snooze button 3 times like she always did, she hit it only twice. She got up just 5 minutes earlier. It wasn't much, but it was something. With those extra 5 minutes, she stood by her window and watched the morning light slowly paint the sky. It was peaceful. It was a tiny splash of color in her gray morning. The day after, she did it again. 5 minutes earlier. And she used those 5 minutes to do a few simple stretches. Her body felt a little more awake, a little more ready for the day. This became her new habit. Just 5 minutes, just for her. This small change started a ripple effect. At work, inspired by her small morning success, she decided to learn one new thing every day. As a librarian, she was surrounded by knowledge. So each day, she picked a book on a random topic: the history of clocks, the art of baking bread, the lives of distant stars. She would read just one page. Not a whole chapter, not the whole book. Just one page. Some days it was fascinating. She learned that the first clocks were water clocks used in ancient Egypt. Other days it was less exciting. A page about soil composition wasn't her favorite, but it didn't matter. The point was the act of doing it. The point was the small, consistent effort. A few weeks passed. Clara's 5 minutes of stretching in the morning had turned into 10. Her one page of reading had sometimes turned into 2 or 3, simply because she was interested. She started to feel a subtle shift inside her. The feeling of being stuck was slowly, gently, beginning to fade. One weekend, she remembered the old gentleman and his words about gardening. She didn't have a garden, but she had a small balcony. She went to the local market and bought a small pot, a bag of soil, and a packet of mint seeds. She had never grown anything before. Following the instructions, she filled the pot with soil, planted the tiny seeds, and gave them a little water. Every morning, after her stretching, she would check on her pot. For days, nothing happened. She felt a little discouraged. Maybe she wasn't a gardener after all. But she kept watering it, just a little bit, every day. And then one morning she saw it. A tiny, bright green sprout pushing its way through the dark soil. A little miracle on her balcony. Clara's heart filled with a joy she hadn't felt in a long time. It was such a small thing, this little plant, but it felt huge. It was proof that small, consistent care could create life. It could create beauty. Inspired, she decided to apply the 1% idea to her social life. Clara was shy. The thought of going to a party or meeting a big group of new people was terrifying, so she started small. The next time she was at the checkout in the grocery store, she did something she had never done. She smiled at the cashier and asked, "How is your day going?" The cashier, a young man who always looked tired, seemed surprised. Then he smiled back. "It's going better now," he said. "Thank you for asking." That small interaction, that tiny moment of connection, warmed Clara's heart all the way home. It wasn't a deep, long conversation. It was just a little spark of kindness. She started doing it every day. A friendly hello to her neighbor, a compliment to a colleague on her scarf, a simple thank you to the bus driver. Little by little, her world began to feel less gray and more colorful. The colors weren't exploding like fireworks. They were appearing softly like a watercolor painting. The pale pink of the sunrise she watched every morning. The vibrant green of her mint plant, which was now growing bigger and smelled wonderful. The warm yellow of a shared smile with a stranger. One evening, about 6 months after the old gentleman's visit, Clara was making dinner. She needed some mint for her recipe. She went out to her balcony and snipped a few leaves from her thriving plant. As the fresh, sweet smell of mint filled her kitchen, she paused. She looked around her cozy apartment. It was the same apartment, but it felt different. It felt like home in a way it hadn't before. She thought about her day. She had woken up early, done her stretches, read a fascinating page about butterflies, had a nice chat with a colleague about a book, and bought a new pot to plant some basil next to her mint. None of these things were big. None of them were life-changing on their own. But altogether, they had changed her. She was no longer the Clara who felt stuck. She was Clara who was growing, learning, and connecting. She was a gardener of her own life, tending to it with small, daily acts of care. She hadn't become a completely new person overnight. She had simply become 1% better every day. And as she looked out her window at the oak trees, their leaves now a brilliant gold, she realized that this quiet, gentle, 1% journey was the most beautiful change of all. It wasn't about reaching a final destination. It was about finding joy in the small steps along the way. It was about falling in love with the process of becoming. Clara smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Her life wasn't a finished masterpiece. It was a beautiful, ongoing work in progress. And she couldn't wait to see what tiny, wonderful things she would do tomorrow. So maybe we can all be a little like Clara. We don't need to make massive, scary changes to improve our lives. What if we just try to be 1% better today than we were yesterday? Maybe it's reading one page of a book. Maybe it's stretching for 5 minutes. Maybe it's saying hello to a neighbor or drinking one more glass of water. These small, almost invisible actions, when repeated day after day, build on each other. They create momentum. They are the seeds from which great gardens grow. The journey of 1,000 miles truly does begin with a single step, and then another and another. So be gentle with yourself. Celebrate the small wins. And remember that progress, not perfection, is the goal. Just a little bit of care every single day. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this story brought you a little comfort and a little inspiration. Take good care, and I hope to see you again soon.